Anyway, 3 common types of influenza viruses, type A, type B, and type C. Type A is really the nastiest one. Type A is the one that generally gets involved in epidemics and pandemics. It's the one that causes the most deaths. It's the one that causes the most illness, causes the most time lost from work. It certainly gets the most press. It has a good PR agent. Type B can be involved in an epidemic, but generally is not so virulent, doesn't cause as many deaths, disability, sickness. So we don't talk so much about type B. And type C you could describe as the good child. Type C maybe is like the common cold. You don't see a lot of it. It needs a better press agent if it wants to make the headlines like type A does. I'm kind of waiting for when type C is going to say, enough of being the good child. I want to be like my big brother and big sister. So this is a nice busy slide here. Pretty schematic of what a flu virus looks like. And on the outside of the flu virus cell wall are 2 proteins, hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. Hemagglutinin we abbreviate with an H, neuraminidase with an N, and it's a good thing because those are tongue twisters and hard to say. So I think from here out, I'll say H and N. So what do these 2 things do? They're very important in terms of A, helping us develop vaccines, but B, in terms of how the RNA is able to transmit this flu virus into us, the host. So the flu virus comes in, finds the cell it likes, and latches on with the hemagglutinin. The hemagglutinin kind of grabs on and says, you're mine. And then the neuraminidase penetrates the host cell wall and injects the viral RNA into the host. Bingo, kills the host, not so nice. It's like a hostile takeover is really what it is. So these things are important to us. Now, the tricky thing is that there's more than one H and one N, and we'll talk about that here on the next slide. There are about 9 neuraminidase subsets and 16 hemagglutinin subsets. Now, if I took out my calculator, because I'm not the world's best math whiz, and multiplied that out, I would get somewhere in the vicinity of 144 different subsets, different varieties of type A virus. Now that's a lot for our bodies to handle, which is kind of why we're not always able to be right on top of what the flu is for this coming season. Now, having said that, I don't want to get too bogged down in those details, but if we can identify what H and what N strain is going to be the big hit this year, then we can develop some vaccines for that. I'll talk about vaccine preparation in a little bit later. Here are some of the big headlines that we've had. H1N1 or Spanish flu, H1N1 swine flu, and trust me, the people who are like the PR for Spain, for the pork industry, Hong Kong, Mexico, they hate having these names. Not good for their PR. And then we have an H1N1, which is kind of a reshuffling of whatever. And it's like playing a game of cards. Shuffle a deck. What did I come up with? What are we going to have facing us this year? And that's what we get to have. This poor H1N2 obviously, again, didn't have a good press agent, didn't get a name of its own. So here are the famous flu epidemics, pandemics that we've had in the history of the world since the turn of the century, the 1900th century, not the 2000th century. And we're going to talk about each one of these in detail. True lessons to be learned, and those who ignore history are destined to repeat history. So we will talk about it because there are some definite patterns that we have learned from looking at those epidemics. I went to bed earlier, but nothing is in your mind thinking I'm sick. By supper time, you're as sick as a dog. That's how fast the flu hits people. So in the Army barracks, by the end of the whole deal, after the flu ran through the entire barracks, spent its course, done, dead, there were about 46 people dead and well over 1,000 people who had been hospitalized. So we think, good, okay, stayed right there, life is good, you know, sad for the Army, but it's all over. Take a breath. It's gone. Well, that was nice, but in autumn in Boston, up pops the same flu again, now even more virulent because that nasty RNA had changed its stripes. So people who had been developed immunity now we're not quite so immune because we changed our stripes just a little bit. So Boston, 1918, it raises its ugly head again, twice as bad, to the point where morticians were really stacking bodies in warehouses because people were dying that quickly. It ran its course throughout the United States, and you see how many deaths were in the US from the result of this flu, and seemed to be on its way out. Life is good. Dodged the bullet again. No pandemic yet. Unfortunately, we're talking about 1918, the end of World War I. So soldiers who had gone home, had transmitted it throughout the US, now are being deployed. Those who survived, thought they had immunity, didn't get very sick, are being deployed over to Europe to finish up World War I and to help rebuild Europe. Guess what they took over the big pond with them? They took the virus. It seemed to concentrate in Spain for some whatever reason, hence Spanish flu, where it also affected the King of Spain. Of course, that's a big deal, gets big press. Kings being kings, thankfully he was pampered and had lots of help and support as much as was possible in 1918, and he did survive. He had a robust, healthy immune system, which brings us to the next point about the flu of 1918. It did not just affect that very young population, that very old population that we always think of flu vaccines as having the greatest impact at. Healthy, robust, well, young people were dying, and dying in big numbers. They looked at going back historically, because they didn't have the technology then, so historically looking back to try to figure out why did young people die, they figured that what happened was young people have healthy, robust immune systems. And so when they got infected with this virus, their immune system really went on full-scale attack. And not only did it go to clean up all of the viral, it actually attacked some of the healthy cells, and the cellular damage was so overwhelming, plus the secondary infections that we always expect to have, young people hence were dying.